unknown mystery, the island that never lets you leave. What if there was a place on Earth where people could enter but never return? A place hidden from ordinary maps, surrounded by endless fog, where boats disappear without a trace and radio signals die in seconds. For over a century, sailors, explorers, scientists, and even government investigators have tried to uncover its secrets. None of them ever came back. Some say the island is cursed. Others believe it hides a secret that humanity was never meant to discover. And the most terrifying part, a few people claim they have actually seen the island appear from the fog, only to vanish moments later as if it never existed. Tonight, we dive into one of the most chilling mysteries ever connected to the American coastline. This is the story of Shadow Isle, the island where nobody returns. The legend began in the late 19th century along the rugged Atlantic coastline of the United States. Local fishermen often spoke about strange lights appearing far beyond the known shipping routes. At first, nobody paid much attention. The sea was full of stories, and sailors had always exaggerated what they saw during long nights on the water. But then, the disappearances started. In 1887, a fishing vessel named the Margaret left port with 6 experienced crew members. The weather was calm, the sea was peaceful. They were expected to return within 3 days. They never did. Weeks later, another fishing boat discovered the Margaret drifting aimlessly hundreds of miles from its planned route. The boat was completely intact. The sails were undamaged, food supplies remained untouched, personal belongings were still on board, but every crew member had vanished. There were no signs of violence, no signs of a struggle, no evidence of a storm. It was as if 6 people had simply disappeared into thin air. The incident shocked coastal communities, but authorities blamed piracy or mutiny. Then it happened again and again. Over the next 20 years, more than a dozen vessels disappeared under similarly mysterious circumstances. Some were never found. Others were discovered abandoned, perfectly preserved, yet completely empty. As the story spread, fishermen began speaking about a strange island hidden inside a permanent bank of fog. According to their accounts, the island appeared only at certain times. Sometimes it could be seen clearly from a distance. Other times it vanished completely. Those who sailed too close reportedly experienced bizarre phenomena. Compasses spun uncontrollably. Clocks stopped working. Radio equipment failed. Many sailors refused to even discuss the island after returning from nearby waters. Some appeared genuinely terrified. Others simply quit sailing forever. Most people dismissed these accounts as superstition. That changed in 1924. A wealthy explorer named Richard Holloway became fascinated by the rumors. Holloway was known throughout America for investigating strange and unexplored locations. Unlike ordinary adventurers, he possessed significant financial resources and access to advanced equipment. Before departure, Holloway announced that he intended to prove once and for all whether the island truly existed. Newspapers across the country followed the story with excitement. On June 14, 1924, the expedition sailed into the Atlantic. For the first few days, communication remained normal. The crew regularly transmitted updates to the mainland. Then, something strange happened. Radio operators reported unusual interference. Messages became distorted. Voices sounded distant and fragmented. Several transmissions contained unexplained noises. Witnesses later described hearing what sounded like whispers mixed with static. The final message arrived on June 19th. The transmission was brief. A frightened crew member reported seeing an island emerging from dense fog. He claimed enormous black cliffs surrounded the shoreline. Unusual lights moved among the trees. Then the signal abruptly ended. No further communication was ever received. A massive search operation followed. The United States Coast Guard spent weeks scanning the region. Nothing was found. No wreckage, no survivors, no evidence. The entire expedition had vanished. Public fascination exploded. Newspapers called it America's greatest maritime mystery. Speculation spread rapidly. Some blamed pirates, others suggested hidden reefs or powerful ocean currents, yet none of those explanations could account for the complete absence of evidence. As decades passed, the story evolved into a legend. The mysterious location became known as Shadow Isle. The name appeared in books, magazines, and countless campfire stories. Many considered it nothing more than folklore. Then, World War II brought an unexpected development. In 1943, a military patrol aircraft flying along the eastern coastline reported unusual radar readings. The crew detected what appeared to be a large landmass in an area where no island should exist. The object remained visible for nearly 20 minutes. When another aircraft arrived to investigate, the radar contact disappeared. Military officials initially classified the incident. Years later, declassified documents revealed references to unexplained geographical anomalies within the same region associated with earlier disappearances. Although the documents never mentioned Shadow Isle directly, many researchers believed the connection was obvious. Interest in the mystery intensified once again. Throughout the 1950s and 1960s, amateur investigators searched tirelessly for evidence. Most found nothing. A few reported extraordinary experiences. One sailor described navigating through heavy fog when he suddenly observed a massive shoreline directly ahead. According to his testimony, the island appeared ancient and untouched. Towering forests covered steep cliffs. Strange structures were visible among the trees. Before he could approach, the entire landscape vanished. The ocean became clear. There was no sign of land anywhere. His account was widely ridiculed, yet several years later, another witness described almost exactly the same scene. The similarities were difficult to ignore. By the 1970s, the mystery had attracted academic attention. A small team of oceanographers decided to conduct a scientific investigation. Unlike previous explorers, they focused on environmental measurements rather than locating the island itself. The results were surprising. Researchers documented unusual magnetic fluctuations in several sections of the region. Navigation equipment occasionally behaved unpredictably. In some locations, instruments produced readings that seemed physically impossible. The scientists could not explain the anomalies. Their report suggested that unknown geological forces might exist beneath the ocean floor. However, this explanation created new questions. How could geological activity account for disappearing ships and aircraft? Why were sightings of the island so consistent? And why did witnesses repeatedly describe similar landscapes despite having no connection to one another? The mystery deepened in 1988.
A commercial fishing crew encountered severe fog during a routine voyage. For several hours, they became disoriented. According to official statements, navigational systems malfunctioned unexpectedly. When visibility finally improved, the crew discovered something astonishing. They were hundreds of miles from their recorded position. Even more disturbing, their onboard clocks disagreed with one another. Some indicated they had lost nearly 3 hours. Others suggested no time had passed at all. Investigators never determined what caused the discrepancy. The incident became one of the most discussed modern cases connected to Shadow Isle. As technology advanced, many assumed the mystery would finally be solved. Satellite imaging, GPS systems, and digital mapping seemed capable of revealing any hidden island. Yet reports continued. In the early 2000s, several private boat captains claimed their GPS devices temporarily displayed land where no land existed. Satellite records showed nothing unusual. Researchers dismissed the reports as technical glitches. Still, witnesses insisted they had seen the island. One captain described black cliffs rising from the sea. Another reported hearing distant bells echoing through dense fog. A third claimed he observed figures standing motionless along the shoreline. When approached, the figures disappeared. The boat immediately lost power. The engine restarted only after leaving the area. These stories spread rapidly across internet forums dedicated to unexplained phenomena. Skeptics argued that confirmation bias influenced witness accounts. Believers insisted the evidence was growing stronger. Then came perhaps the most unsettling discovery of all. In 2015, historians examining archived maritime records uncovered dozens of forgotten reports stretching back more than 100 years. Many documents described identical experiences. Witnesses from different eras consistently mentioned unusual fog, equipment failures, black cliffs, and unexplained lights. Some reports were separated by decades. Others came from individuals who could not possibly have known about earlier accounts, yet the similarities were remarkable. Researchers began considering a disturbing possibility. What if all these witnesses had encountered the same phenomenon? What if Shadow Isle was not merely a myth? Various theories emerged. Some investigators proposed that the island represented a rare atmospheric illusion. Others suggested secret military experiments. More extreme theories involved dimensional anomalies, time distortions, or unknown natural forces. None successfully explained every detail. Perhaps the most chilling theory suggested that the island somehow exists outside normal reality. According to this idea, Shadow Isle occasionally intersects with our world before disappearing again. Those unfortunate enough to reach its shores become trapped forever. While the theory sounds impossible, supporters point to the strange navigational failures, time anomalies, and disappearances surrounding the mystery. Of course, there is no scientific evidence proving such claims, yet no conventional explanation has solved the puzzle either. Today, the waters associated with Shadow Isle remain largely unremarkable on official maps. Ships cross the region regularly without incident. Most sailors never experience anything unusual. But every few years, new reports emerge. A strange light in the fog, a mysterious radar contact, an unexplained equipment failure, or a fleeting glimpse of dark cliffs rising from the ocean before vanishing once more. Perhaps these incidents are coincidences. Perhaps they are misunderstandings created by difficult conditions at sea. Or perhaps they are fragments of a much larger mystery that humanity still does not understand. The truth remains unknown. What happened to Richard Holloway and his expedition? Why did so many vessels disappear without explanation? Why do witness descriptions remain so consistent across generations? And if Shadow Isle truly exists, what waits on its shores? Some mysteries eventually find answers. Others fade into history, but a few remain forever beyond our understanding. Shadow Isle belongs to that final category. Somewhere beyond the fog, beyond the reach of ordinary maps, beyond the limits of certainty, the legend continues. And if the stories are true, there is still an island in the Atlantic Ocean where people arrive but never return. The mystery of Shadow Isle did not end with the disappearances. In fact, many researchers believe the most terrifying chapter began afterwards. Because over the years, a small number of people claimed they had escaped. Not from the ocean, not from a shipwreck, but from the island itself. Their stories were so strange that most authorities dismissed them immediately. Yet despite being separated by decades, these witnesses described nearly identical experiences. And that's what makes their accounts so disturbing. The first widely documented case emerged in 1937. A commercial cargo vessel traveling toward New York discovered a small lifeboat drifting alone in rough seas. Inside was one survivor, a man named Thomas Reed. According to shipping records, Reed had vanished nearly 8 months earlier aboard a research vessel that disappeared while investigating reports connected to Shadow Isle. The crew that rescued him expected to find a starving, dehydrated castaway. Instead, they found something much stranger. Reed appeared physically healthy. His clothing was worn but intact. He showed no signs of severe malnutrition. Most shocking of all, he believed only 3 days had passed since his disappearance. When informed that 8 months had gone by, Reed became visibly distressed. He insisted everyone was mistaken. He repeatedly claimed he had recently left a forested island after becoming separated from his crew. Medical evaluations found no obvious signs of mental illness, yet his story grew increasingly bizarre. According to Reed, the island contained enormous forests, unlike anything he had ever seen. The trees appeared ancient. Many reached heights that seemed impossible. A permanent fog covered large portions of the landscape. Sound behaved strangely there. Sometimes distant voices seemed close. At other times, nearby sounds appeared to come from miles away. Even more disturbing were the structures. Reed described finding stone ruins scattered throughout the island. The architecture did not resemble any known Native American, European, or colonial design. Massive stone walls emerged from the forest before disappearing beneath the earth. Some structures appeared thousands of years old. Others looked almost new, yet none showed signs of habitation. The island felt abandoned, but Reed insisted he was never truly alone. He often sensed something watching him in the fog. At night, he reported seeing lights moving between the trees. Whenever he attempted to approach them, they vanished. His most frightening experience occurred near what he described as a giant stone archway overlooking the sea. While standing beneath the structure, Reed heard hundreds of voices whispering simultaneously. The voices spoke languages he didn't recognize. Then one voice suddenly spoke English. It repeated the same sentence over and over. "Leave before the tide changes." Terrified, Reed fled toward the shoreline. The next thing he remembered was waking alone inside the lifeboat. Authorities dismissed the account as trauma-induced hallucination, yet Reed never changed his story, not once. He maintained the same details until his death decades later. For many years, his testimony remained an isolated curiosity. Then another survivor appeared. In 1968, a private sailing vessel reported rescuing a woman named Margaret Collins. Collins had disappeared during a solo voyage nearly 6 weeks earlier. Like Reed, she appeared confused when informed how much time had passed. And like Reed, she claimed to have spent only a few days on a mysterious island.
Investigators were stunned by the similarities between the two accounts. Collins described dense fog, ancient ruins, unexplained lights, and the overwhelming sensation of being observed. She also reported something Reed had never mentioned. According to Collins, the island contained people, or at least beings that looked like people. She first noticed them shortly after arriving on shore. At a distance, they appeared normal, silent figures standing among the trees. Whenever she approached, they disappeared into the fog. Eventually, she managed to get close enough to see one clearly. The experience haunted her for the rest of her life. The figure resembled a human being, but something was wrong. Its movements appeared unnatural, almost mechanical. Its eyes reflected light like those of an animal. And, according to Collins, its face seemed slightly different each time she looked at it, as though it could not maintain a stable appearance. She fled immediately. The figure never pursued her, yet she claimed she could feel its gaze following her everywhere she went. Years later, psychologists attempted to explain her story as a stress-induced delusion, but Collins remained adamant. She had seen something that should not have existed. As these accounts accumulated, a new theory emerged among researchers. Perhaps the island was not empty. Perhaps the disappearances were not accidents. Perhaps something on Shadow Isle was actively preventing people from leaving. The idea sounded absurd, yet unexplained details continued to surface. During the 1980s, several former military personnel came forward with extraordinary claims. According to their statements, government agencies had quietly monitored the region for decades. Some alleged that naval vessels occasionally detected unexplained signals originating from remote sections of the Atlantic. The signals appeared briefly before disappearing. Attempts to locate their source consistently failed. Officially, none of these claims were verified. However, the rumors fueled public fascination. Books, documentaries, and investigative reports explored every possible explanation. Some researchers focused on geology, others examined atmospheric anomalies. A few explored the possibility that Shadow Isle represented an unknown natural phenomenon beyond current scientific understanding. Then came an event that remains controversial to this day. In 1997, an independent research team launched one of the most sophisticated investigations ever conducted. Their vessel carried advanced navigation systems, satellite communication equipment, environmental sensors, and high-resolution cameras. Everything was recorded. Everything was monitored. Unlike earlier expeditions, this mission was designed specifically to eliminate uncertainty. If strange events occurred, there would finally be evidence.
For the first week, nothing unusual happened. The team collected environmental data and surveyed the surrounding waters. Then conditions changed. A massive fog bank appeared unexpectedly. Visibility dropped to nearly zero. Radio transmissions became distorted. Satellite communication failed. According to surviving digital logs, navigational instruments began displaying contradictory information. Different systems reported different locations. Compass readings fluctuated wildly. Crew members described feelings of disorientation and anxiety. Several reported hearing sounds outside the vessel, despite the absence of nearby ships. One scientist recorded a personal journal entry shortly before communication ceased. He wrote that faint lights were visible inside the fog. At first, they appeared stationary. Then they began moving toward the vessel. The final transmission arrived hours later. The message lasted only 14 seconds. A voice calmly stated, "We found the island." Then silence. The vessel vanished. No wreckage was ever recovered. No distress signal followed. No survivors were found. To this day, the disappearance remains unexplained. For many observers, the incident transformed Shadow Isle from an old maritime legend into a modern mystery. The fact that advanced technology had failed to provide answers only deepened public curiosity. In the years that followed, satellite monitoring increased dramatically. Researchers analyzed thousands of images, searching for evidence. Nothing conclusive emerged, yet occasional anomalies continued appearing. Unusual shadows, temporary land formations, radar contacts that vanished moments later. Each incident generated intense debate. Each raised more questions than answers. Today, some experts believe the entire legend can be explained through a combination of environmental conditions, navigational errors, folklore, and human psychology. But others remain unconvinced. They point to the consistency of witness accounts, the repeated reports of lost time, the disappearances, the strange similarities spanning more than a century, and, perhaps most importantly, the complete lack of a satisfactory explanation. Because mysteries normally become less mysterious over time. Evidence accumulates, questions are answered, truth emerges. But Shadow Isle seems to operate differently. The more investigators study it, the stranger it becomes. And somewhere in the Atlantic fog, according to legend, the island still waits, silent, hidden, watching, waiting for the next ship to drift too close, waiting for the next explorer determined to uncover the truth, waiting for the next person brave enough to step ashore. Because if the stories are true, Shadow Isle does not merely trap people, it remembers them. And once the island knows your name, you never truly